Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening and welcome to Pause for the Truth. I am Jocelyn Turner, your co host. Such a lovely day in Florida. When I looked on the temperature gauge in my car, it says 77. I was like, yay, I love those kind of days in Florida where it's only 77 degrees. Joining me, of course, before we get to our guest for the evening is Dr. Rogers Kane, co host. How are you doing, Dr. Kane?
I'm absolutely great. You better enjoy it while it lasts, because we're back. Look, the dog days of summer come early this year. They
I
come in
know.
spring.
I know. Isn't that the truth? I think that's a cue that we need to have another discussion on climate change.
Absolutely, we have got to go that direction, because all of us have to live in this world. And I don't care if you black, white, blue, green, yellow, Republican, Democrat. The atmosphere don't give a damn about you if you don't give a damn about it. So we need to do something about our climate.
And speaking of which, if you have not seen the segment on ABC, check out the story that David Muir did on the South Sudan. Very, very scary and very, oh, so
Telling,
disheartening and sad.
it's very telling, I'm sure.
Yeah, very telling of climate change. Also, coming from behind the scenes is Tyrone Jackson, our technology guru. How are you doing this evening, Tyrone?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you for asking.
And thank you for coming from behind the scenes. Obviously, our special guest brought you from behind the scene. You have some interesting questions to ask.
No,
Octavia,
well, I just like for it to have three pictures on the screen. I don't like the
the imbalance of it all.
I don't
We
like
got
the
you.
imbalance of it. And I was sitting here thinking how we have you outnumbered. So, Dr. Kane, if there was ever a time for us to beat up on Jocelyn, this is it.
It's the time. We got
Right.
females.
I'm game for that.
We're gonna draft you in on that, okay?
Oh boy, listen, stop it. So tonight we are discussing criminal justice, the landscape, law changes, and rights. And I am pleased to introduce to you my friend and the esteemed Octavius Holliday, Assistant State Attorney, Deputy Director of the Human Rights Division. How are you doing this evening, Octavius?
I'm doing much better now. I had a little problem getting on, but glad to be here, Jocelyn.
Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. And you know, Octavius, I have to admit to my co-host that I follow you a lot or have conversations with you a lot, and you always, you know, really you I really learn from you on a serious tip about things that are happening. And so I'm pleased that you joined us tonight to enlighten our audience. When you talk about laws and our rights and things that are happening, you know, as everyday citizens, most people just don't pay attention to it until they are faced with the criminal justice system. Unfortunately, in some instances, it's when they've had children who have misbehaved or relatives who have cut up and shown up and and they experience a day in the life of the courthouse of and you know what I'm talking about
Yeah, that's right.
here in Jacksonville. But first of all, tell us a little bit about your job. Why a human rights division?
Well, when my boss is Melissa Nelson. So when Melissa Nelson was elected over the incumbent Angela Corey back in 2016, she had some guys come over from the federal system, and she wanted a division that was going to take care of or handle some very sensitive types of cases. And one of those cases is elder abuse. One types of cases, elder abuse. There was never a division in Florida that really handled our seniors. Another part of that is hate crimes. again, most offices didn't have a division that was set up to take on hate crimes. And that's not just racial, that's religion, sexual orientation, those kind of things. And in addition to that, human trafficking as well was housed with me. For a time, there was animal rights as well. So it's kind of a hodgepodge, but it's a lot of different kinds of cases that catch your attention. It gets headlines, and it deserves an experienced prosecutor to handle them. So that was her idea. It turns out that the elder abuse part of it might be about 75 to 80% of my cases, in terms of, because there's so many different ways to take advantage of a senior citizen or an older adult, whether it's exploitation or violence or even neglect. So anyway, that takes up a lot of my time, but I get police officer violence as well. I guess I forgot to mention that. A division that specializes in when officers commit violent crimes against the public, whether it's excessive force to the public or in the jails, that'll come to my desk as well.
Wow, it saddens me to hear you say elder abuse. It really, I mean, is it usually people that know the people, or is it strangers committing crimes against elders? Typically, I know that you can't be specific about any case, but just in general.
I've handled enough to just give you a broad stroke here. A lot of times it is family members, especially when it comes to violence. So a lot of times the grandparents, they raise the grandchildren. There's no adult, no parent. Well, they're adults, but there's no parent there. And the child, well, it's not a child, it's an adult now, but they start abusing the grandparent for money, for drug use. Sometimes they have mental health issues. So a lot of times it's family issues, but we get all kinds. So everything comes to me, Jocelyn. So I don't know your age now, but if you hit 5 already, and I've had road rage or people attacking seniors in on the Publix parking lot, it's going to come to me, and I'm going to have to deal with it. But also our nursing homes, when you have a nurse that sexually abuses a senior citizen, or people stealing their credit cards while they're in the hospital and then going out and using them. So we get all kinds. I don't want to depress you all, but I don't know if you can see the files behind me in my office, but I stay busy.
I'm actually not depressed. I see a lot of it. I do take, overwhelming majority of my patients are geriatric.
Yes. Yes, sir.
60 to 65.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do see quite a bit of that. Sometimes it appears to be somewhat inadvertent. Hope we didn't lose Mr. Holiday. Yeah.
No. Somebody calling me.
Sometimes it appears to be a little, it may be inadvertent. I think sometimes people get comfortable with thinking that senior citizen has everything, they're able to take care of themselves when they're obviously not. And I think sometimes the kids don't just really get as involved with the parent as they should and could. Sometimes they're wearing blinders, don't really want to see what's actually going on in mom, dad, or grandma and granddad home. But you also have the kind of I call them trash, individuals that go along and actually thrive on taking advantage
Absolutely.
of some of those senior citizens in terms of anything from trying to get them to put on a new roof that they may not need, or charge excessive prices, and so on and so on. I mean, it never ends.
It never ends. But that could be a whole show on its own. If I come back and talk about protecting our seniors, that could be a whole show. I can stay here for hours just discussing that one.
Well, hold your horses. Let's not walk past the elephant in the room. Did I hear him say sexual abuse of seniors?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, so I don't know if you could see, but I'm sure our viewers could see the look on my face and Miss Jocelyn's face when he said that. That was kind of a blow and unexpected. So I did want to just stop there for a moment and acknowledge that elephant that jumped in the room.
Well, when you have under Chapter 825 in Florida statutes, it deals with not just a certain age of an individual, but a loss of their cognitive abilities. So if they have dementia or Alzheimer's, they're not able to readily report the abuse to them like some other citizens. So when you're in a nursing home, a memory care facility, a lot of abuse is happening there, not just sometimes it's sexual abuse, but it's physical abuse as well. Nurses losing their patients and striking individuals. So we get all kinds of reports. But again, if they come to my desk, I'm going to treat it with care. So I'll just say I'm a nice person in public, but if I see these kind of atrocities to our seniors, I'm not so nice. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, when you hear from me, get them. Yeah,
Yes,
wow. Wow.
I hear the citizens a lot. They're coming in and I mean, I really understand. It might be news to you and Jocelyn, but I mean, I see it. Some of these patients, sometimes their kids are in the room with them, and I can see the frustration on those kids' face. And sometimes they look like they want to reach out and hit the parent. Now, they don't in front of me, obviously.
Right.
They don't. But you could see the anger in them because that parent may be repetitious in terms of things they're saying or doing because they got the dimension. They don't recognize that they're being repetitive in their actions, but it frustrates that family member. Next thing you know, you get that abuse potential on it. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So of all the things you've said, in addition to, other than the elder abuse, because that's very disheartening and sad to hear, is there an increase in hate crimes, or is it just being reported more?
You know what? First of all, it's very hard to prove a hate crime. Let's just put it that way. Just because someone uses foul language or calls someone the N-word or whatever, that does not make it a hate crime. A lot of, but it still gets to my division because we take all cases that have a racial animus to it as well. So, but hate crime is when you target someone based solely or primarily on their race. What you normally get is kind of a mixed intent, where you have like, again, I can't call it this case, it's pending, but what you normally have is a situation where two citizens interact, perhaps one's white, one black, and then as tempers flare, that's when the racial animus comes into play in terms of name calling and that kind of intimidation. Those still come to me, but as far as hate crimes, I've had persons target the Jewish community. I had a rash of individuals shooting and targeting the trans community. As far as African Americans, I did have quite a few for a while, where it's just pulling guns on citizens as they drive down the highway, and so that got to be a little crazy. But so I wouldn't say it's an uptick. I say it's pretty constant since I've been in this position over the last 6 years. But some of the things you see are outright crazy.
Since you mentioned it, we were talking. Oh, go ahead, Tyrone.
I was going to say, with what you just said, I wonder whether or not you expect an increase with the law that DeSantis passed with regard to the open carry law.
I personally don't. I know that's the rhetoric out there that it's going to be open season. I don't, because not a lot is going to be changed in my mind. And I say this because I think I just mentioned to Jocelyn the other night at one of our meetings with the Urban League. You have what they call constitutional carry, Second Amendment, your right to bear arms. There are still so many limitations on it. They still want you to take the class, show your training, have a certificate for training. Okay, fine. You don't have to pay the money to the state. Okay. But you still can't carry a concealed weapon inside of a school, say, or a courthouse or a police station. You still can't, if it's a felon, you still can't have a firearm. If you're a juvenile delinquent before your age of 24, you can't carry a firearm. Anybody under the age of 21 can't have a firearm. So you still have those laws in place. So the only population that's really, I guess, benefiting from this are people who didn't have the funds to pay the $300 to $400 to get the license to begin with. I don't know how large that population is, but I think the overall message is that more people have guns and more people be careless with those firearms. I just don't see it as far as being a practical look at it, but I know what the public is feeling though, and what they're saying.
Yeah, Dr. Kane's line has been, it's going to be Wild Wild West. And I think I shared with him the conversation I had with you, and I told him we would probably talk about that tonight, because it is, until you cleared it up, I was thinking that it was really open season for folks who would be able to carry guns. So it's nice to hear that the laws still protect us, in that manner. Are there any new laws, by the way, that we should be knowledgeable of or think about that maybe folks have not paid attention to?
Um, I'm not sure how much
Relative.
of an effect that's like. I think, um, traditionally, I say traditionally, the last 45, 50 years, the death penalty has been relegated only to first degree murders. Okay. And that makes sense in a lot of people's mind. Now you have to have a unanimous verdict and also a unanimous decision to seek death. Um, the Florida legislature is considering, I think it might have just passed, probably starting in October, where, well, if you commit capital sexual battery, which means you have a forcible sex act on someone under the age of 12, to be considered for the death penalty. That's very unique in the country. It was not unique 50 years ago, but it's very unique now for a state to have that kind of law. So, but it's being considered all over the country. I don't really get into the politics too much, but you can see where things are going. To be blunt about it, in the red states, there's been a really big push towards some really conservative type enactments of laws. That's being one as far as the death penalty for a sexual predator. Also, if you remember the George Floyd protest situation, not just the George Floyd situation or crime, the murder, if you will, but the protest that happened as a result of that murder. In terms of how we protest in Florida, that law has changed. In terms of our riot law, and then you can protest peacefully. Of course, you're protected to do that by the First Amendment to peacefully assemble. But if a riot or you're encouraging and inciting riots, that's a higher penalty for that now. If a battery happens in the middle of one of those situations that people term a riot, that's a very vague kind of thing. What is a riot? What's not? I think that's a direct reflection and reaction to the George Floyd protest, as well as there's a law that's going through the House and the Senate now where there's proposed to be a limit on how close a citizen can be to a police officer who's involved in a traffic stop or doing their duties. And that's been discussed at 20 feet, but I think it's 30 feet. That's before the legislature right now, that a person couldn't come within 30 feet of a police officer, kind of a halo around law enforcement. It's good and bad to that. Obviously, want to protect law enforcement, but then you also don't want to limit community action as far as filming what's going on. If we didn't have people filming the George Floyd situation, we might not have had justice in that case. So anyway, so those are things, I think those are things pushed by a very conservative mindset throughout some of the country. Abortion laws, Florida's pushed it from 15 weeks to 6 weeks. You know, I'm not a woman, but 6 weeks. I have children. I don't think we knew in 6 weeks that pregnant.
I can tell you we didn't. And I'm a doctor and I didn't know any better.
Yeah, I got double twins, got 2 sets of twins, and so she's getting big quick. But I don't think we knew in 6 weeks. I think it was right around there. But anyway, you can see the agenda is being pretty clear in terms of some of the push throughout the country, and especially here in Florida. We have a very aggressive governor who is, in my mind, you know, I'm not trying to upset anybody on the panel, on the panel or out there, but in my mind, it feels like his agenda is to get to the White House, so he's pushing buttons to try to make him achieve that goal.
Well, you're definitely not offending anybody on the panel.
Okay.
But
I like straight. I'm not trying to, whatever side people fall on, whatever. You know.
But the hypocrisy I see to some degree is, you know, you're going to get a death penalty for somebody who rapes a 12-year-old, but that 12-year-old cannot get rid of that rapist baby.
Right.
Yeah, right. That is ridiculous. But I mean, you know, I'm not saying, when I say but, I don't mean let's accept it, but it's still the hypocrisy of what of that law and translation of that law is ridiculous.
So there are no exceptions in the law beyond, you know, for the 6 week, beyond the 6 weeks.
I think rape and incest is the exception.
Okay.
I'm more familiar, but I believe it's rape and incest. Right, but 6 weeks again. This seems crazy to me. It really does.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's just pushing the envelope to get votes. That's what it feels like. I don't understand what the purpose of that is when most states fall right around 15 weeks to 20 weeks. It used to be that 20 weeks was called
Right.
6 weeks, and that was kind of the point where everybody considered as far as legal. But 15 to 20, that seems reasonable. But 6 weeks is, I think, trying to send a message. And then to have, not to talk about this too much, but to have the governor remove a state attorney from office, I believe in Pinellas County.
Yes.
Might have been Hillsborough, but I think Pinellas County, where he actually he didn't have a dereliction of duty. He basically said it was Andrew Warren. So I forget which district state attorney Warren is in, but he just said he wouldn't prosecute somebody for violating the abortion law.
I remember.
He didn't actually do it, and just based on that statement,
he was removed.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, did I also hear you say something about human trafficking, and how does your office, work with regards to human trafficking?
Well, I don't do them personally. I just work under my division. We have a couple of attorneys who do that, but and I'm not making light of this now, okay? But human trafficking is really the whole pimp game, prostitution and pimping or whatever. But that's one part of it. Sex trafficking, where you're forcing young ladies. Now, you have independent contractors, we call them. They're working on their own, but if you have someone making money off of individuals and force them into different things, then we look at that a lot more seriously, that we're trying to make sure that women are not forced, women and men aren't forced into these to the sex business. So we work hand in hand with the federal government. A lot is done online nowadays, a lot of online solicitation, not just in the streets as you would 20, 30 years ago. So we have task force that are targeting individuals who are trying to coax young ladies who run away from home as a teenager. A lot of times that happens, and then people who are abusing drugs as well. So we've got a lot of partners in Jacksonville. I know Rethreaded is one of our largest ones in terms of employing former persons who have been trafficked. So we just got a lot of partners, a lot of partnership between law enforcement agencies and community partners.
Do you find that, and to your knowledge, are most people who are trafficked young people, or can they be older people?
Not usually older, but when I say young, teenagers in their 20s and 30s, yes, ma'am. Especially if they have a drug dependency.
Oh, wow. If you're just tuning in, we are speaking with special guest Octavius Holliday, Assistant State Attorney, Deputy Director of the Human Rights Division, a division that many of us may not know about. And he's talking about those areas that are within his department, including elder abuse. Can you imagine elder abuse, hate crimes, and human trafficking? If you have a question for Attorney Holliday, you can dial in now, 888-669-1280. Again, 888-669-1280. Now, keep in mind, this is his job, so don't ask him anything that he can't answer. Respect the man and the position that he holds with the state attorney's office, but we're appreciative. When we were preparing, we always try to prepare for the show, and one bill that I was looking up, I'm not sure if it started, it's House Bill 115 about people who are incarcerated and reducing their sentence from serving 85% to 65% if they are doing good and educating, getting training and education.
Okay.
And there are different opinions about that one way or other, but it prompted my thought of, when someone is released from prison, are they set up, if you will, to, with a place to stay or with money, a job or anything? How do we help really help these people to get on track and not, commit further crime? Do you know?
Well, first of all, first of all, I don't believe that law of the bill of trying to reduce it from 85 to 65 has a snowball's chance. And where this is a state that is pro law enforcement and pro heavy sentencing, so I don't understand how
that ain't gonna happen.
That's not somebody saying increase from 85% to 100%, that might happen, but
wow.
we might have, but we do have to give inmates incentive, obviously, to get out. So the 85% is not that you release them at 85%. You at 85%, they're eligible to be on a conditional release where they go to facilities that kind of a halfway house.
Oh, okay.
A lot of inmates, a lot of my defendants elect not to do that. They feel like they're going to get out, get a taste, and then get in trouble again and be in a worse situation. So some of them elect not even to participate in that. But in terms of Jacksonville has the Jacksonville Reentry Program through the Sheriff's Office. We also have, help me out now. What's with Forward? What's Forward over now? He's
Operation New Hope.
Operation New Hope. Right.
New Hope.
Yep, Operation New Hope. So you have different agencies, and I've worked with some smaller ones. My philosophy years ago was to try to do mentoring on to try to prevent the crime, as far as young people, do my job as a prosecutor, and then also be involved in the rehabilitation and fight against recidivism on the backside. But ultimately, do we do enough? No, I don't think so. I think people get out, they find themselves lacking money, lacking opportunities, lacking housing. If you don't have a driver's license, you don't have a way to get around, you don't have money to start, and you don't have a support system, you're probably going to find yourself right back in the criminal justice system. That's a sad
Ms. Turner, we did men's health when we did, the men's health summits, the various one we've done. One of the things that you made sure you had happen was working with the state attorney's office and bringing those young kids in and trying to show them the right way to
the diversion program.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and we haven't done that in a couple of years because of COVID. And I just want to know what the status of that program is and what are we looking at as it relates to those kids before they get in that permanent trench of being incarcerated as an adult. What kind of programs have been that are either still exist, or in the making, the makings, work in the makings of trying to help prevent, since you mentioned prevent those kids from entering into that conundrum?
Well, I can tell you where I work. Where I work, the Partnership for Child Health, we have a diversion program where we work with those youth to really help get them on track, and just what it says, diversion, intervening to get them, in some instances, counseling if they need it, and also just being a support system, finding those resources that the family may lack or may need. And the thing I think that's been the biggest thing for me, and Octavius, you can chime in, is the fact that parents are not aware of the things that their children are involved in until the police officer shows up at their house, or either they get the call from the child and saying that they've been arrested. Would you find that as the case, Octavius?
I'm kind of cynical, Jocelyn.
You think they know?
I raised 4, so if they weren't coming home at night, right? If they had cash, I didn't know where it came from, or new clothes, then I would have my suspicion. So when these parents act surprised, I'm not surprised. I'm like, come on now, good and well when Junior had this, that, and the other, that something was going on. So they might be willful blindness, like they choose not to. But that's just one position. I have seen it when I was a defense attorney, because I did do defense work for 5 years. I left this office and went and did my firm for about 5 years. I have seen it where these are young black men I was representing. They have a totally different persona with their mom and sisters and family. It was just crazy. I knew the crime they was accused of doing and the kind of violence that it took to even commit that kind of crime. And they were just the sweetest young men when it came to their moms and grandmothers. I was like, man, she don't know you wilding out every Friday and Saturday, but they keep that hidden. So you're right about that, Johnson. I think it does get hidden, but at the same time, if you pay attention and actually raise your kids, I think you'll pick up on that. But we have a lot of programs. I think most juveniles get second, third, and fourth chances. You don't really survive the chances until you become violent. When you become violent, pick up a gun, become gang related, that's when you're going to find yourself in adult court. Right. We can't play with you.
I'm not defending those parents, like as what you said, but like
Mhm.
what you said. But I do remember, my mom. She had 4 boys,
Mhm.
but she worked 2 jobs,
Yes, sir.
and
Yes, sir.
one of them went from 2:30 in the afternoon to 11:30 at night, and didn't get home to 1 o'clock just to feed the family. So the
Yes, sir.
things that, including yours truly, the things
Mhm.
that we would get into, she would have no clue what we
Right.
were doing,
Right.
and my dad wouldn't either. He was there, but he wasn't there at that time
I
in
understand
terms
that.
of. So I do that. I do recognize that there. I'm just trying to say there's some parents out there that winds up being
Right. Right.
uh,
Right.
a
Well,
situation.
and now that you bring that up, that's going to bring me to chime in because I've raised 2 boys as well. And there is a change. I was raised by a single mom, and
Mhm.
the mentality of my mom, as compared to the mentality I see of women who have children or young today, is completely different.
Right.
There's this overwhelming desire to be your child's friend. And in that being a friend is where the blindness, in my opinion, occurs. My mother I had no delusions of my mother being my friend. Okay. So she was short on time, like you said, Doctor. She had work to do. And believe me, I needed to respect and understand that. So
Yep.
those times where I did not, and she had to reprimand me, put fear enough into me not to have to go down that route again.
Well, my only point was when they know, because mine would cut my throat. She would have slit my throat if that took, you know, to get me on the right track. If she knew, I'm just
Right.
saying things that we did that she never knew. And to this day, when I tell her some of the things, she's going like, "What? You ready to slit
Now,
my throat down for what happened 60
now,
years ago?"
just anecdotally, just in doing what I do, I have noticed now, and I think some of this has been put out in the Jacksonville Journey report. If you get a young man who has multiple siblings and is a single mother, and she's below the poverty line, and he's a double retainee, once he fails 2 grades, that young man is pretty much headed to prison, unless there's something that comes in and intersects that path. And that's
Right.
something, as I've looked at these different cases over the years, I put it in 3 categories. If that mother, working as hard as she's working with multiple kids and usually no father support, if she doesn't get them involved in a church home, that's one, or get them heavily involved in sports where you have male mentorship that way, or get them in a male mentorship program. If doesn't do one of those 3 things, I mean, this sounds like everybody knows this. I believe they know this. I should know it. When the neighborhood gonna raise a kid, then it's not gonna turn out well usually. But you can head off. A woman in that situation can head off that situation if she really does invest in getting those young men in a church home. But if you have a young man in that situation and his older sibling went to prison, that's another element of that person headed to a prison as well. It becomes less of a fear of jail and more like he's destined to go there, and almost he puts that in his own mind that he's going to end up in prison. So
We've done a couple of shows on that, in terms of those aversion programs or other programs by which we try to get kids into. But one of the things, how is your office handling the big monster, the big gorilla in the room, social media, in terms of how to address some of these things that back in the day, it was work, it was mouth to mouth repetition of what happened. Yeah, but we got the social media avenue that plays such an important role with the way the children behave and our responses to their behavior and so on and so on. Has the state attorney's office incorporated or gotten some division that utilizes social media to help accomplish their mission at trying to prevent crime and so on and so on?
no, sir, it's the opposite. We have a gang violence unit. We have an aggravated battery unit, and we have people who have social media profiles that are intended just to infiltrate into different friend groups and social groups in order to get evidence to prosecute those individuals.
Right,
So it's
right,
not,
right.
a good thing. It's not, we're gonna try to move kids away from crime. It's more like those individuals out there committing crimes and they're talking about it on social media. We're using that to prosecute. So I have not seen. I mean, I didn't tell y'all this. I mean, you didn't ask me to do a real introduction. I do Human Rights Division. That's one of my hats. My other hat is the Community Crime Strategies Unit. That was developed back in 2019, where we're trying to put the state attorney's office more and more in the public in terms of we're not just trying to throw young men away, but also showing that we can be transparent and accessible to the community. So I had that unit, and when Johnson sees me all over Jacksonville, I'm getting paid for that too. I do it because I love to do it, but that's a part of my job. You see me switching from a Omega shirt to a state attorney shirt, 100 Black Men shirt, then you understand where I'm coming from.
I was gonna say that was gonna be my next comment, that when you were talking about diversion early and involve, just in general, the things that people need to be involved in, you're right. I mean, if you look at his bio, you will see that he is involved and active in so many groups, and I like that, and I think that I wish people would connect with some of the groups. There are some boys who don't have a positive role model in their life, and to connect with some of these adult male groups who are doing mentoring, and parents just, I don't know if they don't know how to link with them. The best place to go, to me, is to go through your school guidance counselor, maybe, and maybe, I don't know, as a parent, because I imagine that some of these organizations will let the schools know that they exist. I know the fraternities have their and my brother is Omega, and you are too, so I know about the lamp lighters because my nephew went through.
Yeah.
That's one example, but
that's our brothers online.
I know there are other organizations that have male mentoring group, but also young ladies. Do you find that girls commit crimes too, and not just the boys? We talk a lot about boys.
Yeah. We should, because girls don't commit crimes nearly like the boys. And normally when you have a violent crime with a young lady, it's attached with a boy.
Or because of
sorry.
Yeah, I remember that one show that we did that really blew my mind, is that the number of young women that attempt suicide was more than double the number of young men who actually accomplish suicide.
Well, when men usually set out, I mean, it's been
when men set out to kill themselves.
Well, that's been one of those things for years, Tyrone. As a physician, as a medical provider, we've known that when you hear a man start talking about committing suicide, you better get serious, because he is. Women, I'm not saying they won't, but they use that. A lot of them use it more of a tool. Not saying all. There's no one bucket for any of this, but a lot of them use that to try to manipulate their family and or significant other that might be causing them to threaten suicide. Use that as a tool. But we've known for years, when you hear a male says he wants to hurt himself, take it seriously. He may, because not only may he hurt himself, but he's mad enough or angry enough, he may take others with him.
Exactly right. Exactly
here,
right.
Go for it. Don't tiptoe through the tulips on that. Go right for the guts and the gusto of taking that guy.
When you have women, girls charged with serious crimes like homicide, armed robbery, those kind of things, it seems cliche, but she's pretty much a decoy. She's with some other male and entice some guy to go to her house or whatever the case might be. So she's normally the co-defendant with somebody else. But so they have an issue of young ladies just going rampant and shooting up places. Now, I've seen an uptick in violence toward each other, women toward women, fights, and sometimes stabbings and shootings. That it gets a little bit ridiculous on that part. But usually, if you find a woman who went out and robbed a bank or robbed a store or whatever, she got a male co-defendant.
Yeah. Somebody behind them pushing it. A man
Mm-hmm.
behind them pushing it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch hats a minute because it's going to be, we're going to be able to start voting on May 1st.
Okay.
And some folks have had their rights taken away from them because they have been in jail or whatever, committed a crime, whatever the case may be.
Right.
Let's talk about restoring rights. If someone's listening or watching us right now and they have not voted because their rights have been taken away, how do they go about restoring their rights? Do they just show up to the supervisor of elections office and they'll tell them what to do, or how does that work? Do you know?
I believe you can show up to the supervisor of elections office and apply, and they're going to tell you whether your rights have been restored or not, whether you're eligible to vote, whether you're eligible elector or not. When was it Amendment 4 a few years ago?
Yeah.
When they were pushing for Amendment 4, I was like, wait a minute. Something's not being addressed. And they were thinking I was a hater and all this other stuff. I'm telling you, from the inside of the system, your sentence is not complete until the court costs, the fees, and the restitution is paid for. So how are we going to say these sentences are complete and they're eligible for restoration of rights when you have so many defendants already indigent, and you're charging them $600 every time you get arrested? It's $600 for a court cost, $600 here. They can't possibly pay it all. And so I knew that from the beginning it was going to be a hindrance. I believe that the people who wanted the amendment passed felt like, let's get the amendment passed and then we'll fight that battle on down the line. But I don't think that's changed yet in terms of people who you still have to make sure your sentence is complete in terms of paying your court costs and whatnot. There's some nonprofits it's two nonprofits I really love. Honestly, I can't work for them because I'm on this side of the law. But there's two. One is a nonprofit that will help you pay your fees and your court costs to make you eligible to vote. And the other one, which is kind of off topic, but I still love their attitude and their mission, is that inside the criminal justice system, you get arrested. Say Jocelyn Turner got arrested today, and somebody alleged something very serious, and then the judge puts a $50,000 bond on you. A lot of people don't have 10% plus collateral to get out of jail, but there's an organization out there, and I forget the name of it, but they actually will put the bond up for you, total in cash, to get the person out, so they can fight the charge from the outside. Even as a prosecutor, I think that's a wonderful thing. I know that some people plea just to get out of jail. The case might be weak, they might be able to beat it, but they're tired of being in jail, so they go ahead and plead guilty, even though they didn't do it or the case is weak. So anyway, I just thought a little soapbox right there. I like that organization.
So let's talk about the thing that I know about you, Octavius. And again, I don't want you to be specific on anything, but
what you know about me?
Why do you think people show up to court unprepared and with foolish excuses and you know what I mean? It just, I mean, I don't get it. You know that your life, your future is impacted by this particular thing, and all you have to do is show up with show up right.
You make an assumption, Ms. Turner, but go ahead.
Yeah. I think she's talking about when I do this thing on Facebook called As Duval County Courthouse Turns, and I'm commenting on some of the silliness I see in our courthouse every day. 330 East Adams Street. Every day we have some silliness going on. But to your point, though, Jocelyn, again, it's serious about it. When I was a defense attorney, and it's not right. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right for anybody to judge defendants based on how they dress or their hair or anything like that. But I'm telling you, when I got hired, I told them right away, if I'm going to be your attorney, all that dread and whatever they got, the stuff on the top, I don't even know what they call them, the twigs, wigs, coming off. We cutting all that off. You're going to all of a sudden need
candle wick.
I guess I'm older now. I think it's wigs or something like that. But you're going to shave it off. We're going to have you have glasses. You're going to be in a suit when you come to court with me. You're going to be articulate. You're going to respect the court. It ain't going to be and all that. Because the first impression you have with the judge and the prosecutor a lot of times sets the course of your case. It sets the course for when I present mitigation for you. that they can accept that. But if you come in looking crazy, and then I'm like, well, I got 5 character witnesses, they be like, I don't care about that. This dude look criminal. So it matters. It matters how you present yourself to a judge. But what Johnson is talking about is when people come to court and act a straight fool, they are not helping their causes. I'm telling you that. I promise you that. But it's making good Facebook content, though. I guess a lot of people.
So he can enjoy Facebook in jail.
Yeah. So, yes,
he or she wants to do it that way. I do have some concern in terms of the. I understood what you're saying about they don't have the money to pay for some of this stuff. 2 things that arise in my mind. One of them is how is it that you sentence to jail to pay your debt to society, but you didn't pay a financial debt to society? In terms of those fees and dues, it seems more like that is just a mechanism by which to keep someone forever enslaved, kind of like a sharecropper.
It feels like that. It feels like that. It does. It feels like that. It feels like a lot of times you're never going to get those court costs out of people. So they're forever in debt. And then when they don't pay the court costs, they issue a little capias, a little arrest warrant that arrests you for a day and say, oh, you didn't pay the court costs. So now we're going to convert the court costs to a civil judgment. So now your credit is forever jacked up, right? It's an ongoing cycle. I don't have an answer for you. I know that if we don't have court costs and fees, you're going to pay more taxes. I know that much because we have to pay for it somehow. The system has to work somehow. So, but I just feel like you got people who already are indigent. They already have to have the public defender for counsel and can't afford bond. But yeah, you're going to put $800 court costs on them. If you hit somebody, a felony battery, you hit somebody, your court cost in Duval County is going to be $560-something plus $151 plus $201, all added together. And then plus you're going to have to pay $150 public defender lien, $1,000 to somebody who couldn't make the $1,000 bond. So it doesn't make any sense to me, but
I have to say this before I know we're getting close to the end of the time, but 2 things I would like to say. For part of what Octavius is saying, we do need to go ahead and look at the new Jim Crow. That is a book that kind of talks about some of these same issues in terms of what people run into, the new Jim Crow. It's an excellent reading, is one. And then I do have to ask this because it's been on my mind for a while. How do we learn to trust, if such a thing exists, to trust our police officers and the words that they provide to that and helping to convict a person based on whatever crime they're supposed to have, when you have, as an example, and you may not be able to comment on this directly, but as an example, that undersheriff or whatever he was in terms of his position, that said 3 things wrong with Jacksonville, marijuana, and black folks. So anybody that anybody up under his wing spread of authority, how can I trust them to be fair to those individuals that don't look like them, that in fact may fit the description that he just described, being black? How do we correct that unfairness or potential for being unfair?
First of all, I don't have the answer. I'm just going to kind of tell you what my thoughts are. Okay. Yeah. Black folks, we all black on this podcast.
For sure.
Right. And there's a history. There's a trauma, a historical trauma that black people have gone through when it comes to slavery, when it comes to Jim Crow, when it comes to citizen patrols, when it comes to all those things where law enforcement and African Americans have been at odds for a long time. War on drugs, all those kind of things. I get it. All right. Well, with that, even if you have officers doing the right thing, you can have 99% of the force doing the right thing, and then one officer does something wrong. Most of us are like, see, there you go. There you go. I told you. That's how it is. it's like we're looking for that one thing to kind of justify how we feel about it. There's not injustices going on inside the police departments and whatnot, but I do feel like I get frustrated with my own people sometimes. This is where frustration comes from. They will not trust police. They will not trust prosecutors, cuss me out, not trust judges until they're the victim of a crime or their family is murdered. And now they are on the opposite side begging citizens to come forward, police officers to do their job, state attorney's office to be invested, right? And it's so frustrating. I've seen this. I just was over at Newtown on last Thursday night speaking to Newtown Success Zone community meeting. And I say young man, shoot, he older than me. An older man said, we have too many shot spotters and too many real-time cameras in Northwest Jacksonville. Well, we have a violent crime problem. And I'm like, how can we have too much where we're trying to solve this issue? And so it seems like we're always bumping up against that kind of thing. Are we oversaturating our communities? Are we not doing enough? They trust us when they're the victims. They don't trust us when their loved ones are arrested. And it's round and round and round. But again, I told you I'm part of the Community Crime Strategy Unit. If you got the answer, you please let me know because I'll put it into effect. But all we're trying to do is right now in Jacksonville, I'm trying to make sure people know that they have a friend inside the state attorney's office where if you feel, and it's kind of a one-man show kind of thing now, I hate to say that, but if you have a loved one that's been arrested or prosecuted and you don't feel like you trust the system, I take that call. That's just kind of what I do. I take the call and let you know, and I might not be able to help your loved one. They might have done something crazy. We got a lot of time, but you will understand the system. I know that much by the time we finish talking. So anyway, I don't know if I answered much there, but I'm just telling my frustration.
Yeah, and I understand that frustration. I can agree with it, that people should do the right thing for themselves, their community, yada, yada, yada. But I think one of the things that we need to make sure we show from the sheriff's office and the state attorney's office is a fairness and equitable distribution of, for lack of a better description, punishment as it comes to things that you do and say. And, when you're in control of lives like police officers are, we grew up in an atmosphere where the police officer, whatever he says or she says, that's what happened. We believed in them because they represented the right. But when you have some that represent the wrong and don't do anything about it, or it doesn't seem to the public you're doing anything about it, that's where I get the issues or concerns at.
Yeah, but
I get you.
I think Octavia's saying, and I think
Tyrone, I'm sorry to cut you off, but Attorney Holliday has another commitment, so we've got to wrap it up this evening. He gave me the heads up, so looks like we need to have him back. Enjoy the discussion, and he already said that you can reach out to him if your family member has committed a crime or you seem to be confused about how the system works. You can call the state attorney's office and ask for Attorney Holliday. And we really appreciated tonight's discussion. Before we let you go, are there any final words that you'd like to share with us, with our audience?
There was one point that wasn't brought up. We covered a lot of topics. I'll be glad to come back on, if it's a Tuesday night show, then the third and fourth Tuesday of the month. I have commitments on the first and second Tuesdays. We haven't talked about juries. And I think when it comes to Black folks, you think about juries, right? When someone is placed on a lot of our people, I've noticed, intentionally try to get off juries. And why? Because a lot of times we're not getting paid when we're on a jury. The jury, a trial might last all week and you're missing a whole week's paycheck. So we don't always have, because there are disparities in wealth and different opportunities as far as jobs, not everyone's job pays for them to be, pays for their work time when they're on a jury. So I believe there should be some types of amendments or some type of laws passed that pay jurors a fair day's wage so that we can have more representation. Because a lot of times Black folks be like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this. And now what we're left with, even though I'm on the prosecution side, I still want to see just and equitable outcomes. Now, we have a jury that don't look like the person accused, and that just equals trouble down the line. So I wanted to add that part in. I know you want closing remarks. My closing remarks is that I'm glad to come back, Joshua, anytime. So
Thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we're going to continue the discussion. I know you have to go, Dr. Kane and and Tyrone. Excuse me, I almost called him Dr. Tyrone, but Tyrone and Dr. Kane appreciate your coming on, and we'll definitely get you back. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Holiday. We much appreciate
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you.
And you will be back.
God bless.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I will be back.
Well.
I promise.
So, Tyrone and Dr. Kane, how'd you feel about tonight's topic? Anything stand out, Tyrone, that you're like, wow, oh my goodness?
Well, when he kind of gave us an overview of the types of things that come across his desk, there were things that were said that were somewhat surprising. In hearing them, knowing that they exist and knowing that they're there is one thing, but hearing them. And then when the question was asked about whether or not young women or there's an uptick, when we've had others on and talked about that, the answer to that question has been yes, that there are more women involved in criminal acts than ever before. But that's coming across his desk and what he sees, the answer is no. Or if so, they are codependent on a male or others who are involved in there. Mm-hmm. So that was surprising for me to hear.
Well, I think with social media, Tyrone, based on what you're saying, with social media, I think opportunity to see that is greater at this point in time. You know, I think before, be honest with you, before social media, you know, with the iPhone and all the other on-site filming and whatever of capturing the event on site and people promoting what they're doing by way of social media. Before then, you know, most women, most participants to some of these crimes can say, I didn't do it, don't know anything about it, prove it, and so on, so on, so on. Well, now, because you know, a lot of people publicize some of their behavior, you know, you want to automatically, you will see somewhat of an uptick in what the women are doing. Doesn't mean there's an uptick in what actually occurred. In other words, more exposure is possible based on what we have available in terms of social media and so on and so on. So more of a capture, got you on camera moment can occur. And so you can't deny like they did before the capturing or the I got you moment.
Right. Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. But the thing that he said also was that in the department division, there is no social media task force.
I want to get back to that.
so the question I have is there a social media task force or a component anywhere in our legal system that's designed specifically for that? When I heard that, I said, man, we got to do some research now to see, because that's a podcast right there for sure.
Well, he did say that. He did say that, and I'm sure it might mean that he can't say. He don't want to give away what they're doing entirely. But I think what he said is that there are people who have social media accounts looking for perpetrators. And so, you know, that is the case. But we are nearing the end of the show.
Before you get, I got to respond to that. That was
we are ending the end of the show, and you didn't answer my question of what your final thoughts were for tonight. That's all I wanted to say to you.
I'm going to stick it in that. Well, Tyrone didn't give his final thought. He had a question. Did you finish, Tyrone?
No, you go ahead, Doc.
My thing was, as far as the social media was concerned, he did acknowledge that they're using it to be able to find criminals and prosecute criminals and so on and so on. My only thing was, why don't we also use social media for intervention and prevention from the state attorney's office? It's what I was trying to get recognized. The opportunity, is there opportunity for intervention when you peeking everybody's social media stuff that's going on? and or as well as prevention of potential crimes or circumstances that you can, again, intervene at some point in time and keep that youngster, that person, from going off to jail and yada, yada, yada. That's the one thing I was trying to get across. But now, wrapping up real quick, it was a great show in terms of giving us some a quick little peek in terms of what goes on in the state attorney's office. And I use that quick little peek, seriously, because we didn't get into enough of the subject matter that we would like to get into. The things that this young man is looking at in its entirety within the state attorney's office is very vast. I don't see how he can be a one-man show the way that he does. I'm sure he works hard. He does everything he can. But I hope the state attorney give him as much assistance as possible, because his mission is not just, he is a prosecutor, but he did state that, his thing is about justice and pretty much what is the right thing to do in terms of the general population. I mean, it's not his words exactly, but that's what I inferred, what I got from what he was saying.
Thank you. Tyrone, did you have any more thoughts or?
A couple of real quick things. I'll try to make them quick. The first thing is the social media component. From what I heard, I think both of you misunderstood it. What he said was, when there is a person that is of interest, they will then use social media to gather evidence and information on that person.
Understood.
What that says is there is no entity specifically designed to look at social media as a whole to find out perpetrators that we don't know at that time. So it appears to me that with the evasiveness of social media, that if we're trying our best as a society to educate youth and to find out the truth of what's going on, when we don't have a legal arm that deals and trolls and understands the apparatus that is social media, then we're going to miss a lot of opportunities.
That is prevention.
To absolutely, to be a better society for our citizens, and that's just, I'm gonna let that be my closing statement.
And my rebuttal to both of you is the state attorneys may not have it, but the sheriff's office might. So don't think that it may not exist, just it may not be within the state attorney's office. And no agency is the be all do all. My final thoughts for tonight is to learn that that the majority of the cases that he deals with within the Human Rights Division of the state attorney's office has to do with elder abuse. How horrible is that? That was very disheartening to hear, that the population that's most vulnerable and who needs our help the most are the ones that are harmed the most. And that is very disheartening to hear. And even, I mean, for him to say over 70% of his cases. 70. So I say to our audience that we need to just make sure that we check, we keep our eyes and ears open and pay attention to those persons who are vulnerable in our communities and don't just look the other way. As always, thank you for tuning in to Pause for the Truth. And if you have not gotten your voting,
okay.
Go ahead. I wasn't finished. I was still.
No, go ahead. Since you're going to talk about the voting, I agree.
If you have not developed a plan for voting soon, do make sure that you do so. For those of you who have friends or family who historically don't vote, write their names down and come up with a concrete plan of how you're going to get those individuals to the poll, even if you have to bribe them by taking them to lunch or something afterwards, buying their favorite meal or snack or adult beverage. Do something to get those folks to the poll, and make sure you do it during early voting and not wait to the last day of voting. Dr. Kane, you had one more thought?
Well, no, this just one little point. I just don't want the statisticians to get us wrong, but the most vulnerable populations are the very young. Second most are the very old. And then make sure when you take them out to vote and you get them drunk before they go, make sure based on your adult beverage recommendation, before you get them drunk, make sure they vote first.
Oh, absolutely. I said as a reward. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned next week as we pause for the truth. Good evening.
Good night.